Welcome to Crisis in Flint, Michigan. My name is Richard Hairston. I want to thank you for joining me today. I think we kind of started with the whole group, well, the gang is all here this morning, as you can observe. Um, uh, she said she wanted gang membership. Oh my.
In the good gang.
Well, we'll
Gang
ask
for
you.
Christ. What can I say? God the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost.
Gang for Christ. That's
Yes.
what are your colors? You don't have to
Oh,
answer that. Thank you so much for joining us. As you can observe, we have a guest in with us this morning, um, and we're going to talk about the upcoming election. This is a part of maybe it's is it fairness doctrine and well, someone equal time and someone's doctrinaire out there that says Beverly Kendall Walker has to be here this morning because we've already had the candidate here that's running in your race, or
Yes.
you're running his race. Let's make it balanced. And we do thank you for being here. A friend, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having
Um,
me.
in years past,
Oh
I have
yes.
certainly supported your candidacy,
Hmm.
and was quite surprised on occasion how you've done, especially with what this is when
A lot of traffic.
uh, it was kind of interesting. But just let me read just a little of what you have here. And again, it's Beverly Kendall Walker. You are a candidate for Wayne County Treasurer,
Hmm. Democratic candidate.
Democratic candidate for Wayne County Treasurer. You are a administrative assistant and managerial. Well, let me just read what's here. Administrative, legislative, and managerial experience is what you bring to the table in city and county government and private sector. Engage civically, education, graduate certificate, public administration, Central Michigan University, BS Community Development, Central Michigan University, associate degree, Wayne County Community College District, Martin Luther King alumni.
Hmm.
Bailey Temple is your church home.
Yes.
And of course, you are a, should I say, lifelong Detroiter, or
Hmm.
for the most part?
Definitely lifelong.
Lifelong. And again, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for
And
having
it's
me.
really so good to see you again.
Good to see you.
Now you've been in this race,
Hmm.
and it is like you've had and set your sights on this particular office, and you have worked hard for a number of years
Hmm.
now.
Hmm.
Because is it that your skills match this particular public service elected office, or is it because the office offers so many opportunities and certainly gives you the scope and power
Hmm.
to impact many things?
Right. Yeah. It's both a combination, but mostly because of the need to help people
Mm.
seriously in their home situation. When we have a threat to your life, to your home, to your castle, if
Mm.
you will,
Yes.
and for little or nothing because of unpaid taxes, it is certainly not fair. Over the years, to what has happened as a public policy mandate coming out of the treasurer's office, that has been detrimental to that very home ownership.
And we've seen, and maybe just by comparison, and just by what has been reported in the news,
Hmm.
it does seem like the treasurer's office has become a bit more aggressive.
Hmm.
I know on Friday the lines were so long
Oh my goodness.
that they had to extend the date.
Hmm.
And I thought that date was a hard date,
It is,
actually.
and it actually is a hard day, June the 30th,
Okay.
according to the state legislation that was signed 2 years ago.
Okay.
June the 30th is a hard date, sunset date, absolutely. So I don't know what the treasurer is extending, because that date has to go through the state legislature to extend it beyond June the 30th.
Okay.
So now what he could be called himself extending is the traditional March 31st deadline date for taxes to be paid, period.
Okay.
Nothing to do with the interest relief that the legislature put in place that was only for 2 years to begin with. So we're not quite sure what he's talking about. It sounds like a bait and switch to me, because the deadline date is absolutely June the 30th to take advantage of the 18% down to 6% on the apprentice.
And that's again, it is legislation that governs that.
Right, and he has no control over changing that particular legislation. Now, the property tax code gives the treasurer statewide a lot of leeway in handling situations, but that particular legislation has nothing to do with the power of the Wayne County treasurer or any treasurer in the state of Michigan. That absolute date certain is June the 30th.
Well, we may have to get a response from him concerning that.
Ooh, I hope so.
And it could be that people were actually who were in line,
Oh,
and
I
maybe
was
they
there on
got
Friday.
they got a rain check. People could have gotten a rain check, and then they could come back. And
Right.
but this is the Beverly Kinder Walker time, and we don't want to necessarily.
Exactly.
But you were you had the ability to really get Detroiters to come out and vote for you. Although Watovich was, and had really developed into an institution
A
here.
mainstay, if you will.
Well, and let's say mainstay. We won't have to say institution. But I don't know how your ability to actually expand into other communities. But there were some things in the election that I recall that was kind of curious in terms of some of the things that happened with you. And I guess I'm thinking about when Maureen Taylor
Okay.
ran
For council.
for council, and
Yeah.
there was another name on
Yeah.
there, Marino Taylor or something like that,
Yeah.
which probably made a huge difference in her ability to move on in that election.
Right.
If you can explain what happened in your election.
Well, that would be the 2012 election.
Okay.
Uh, that election that Phil Kavanaugh and Tupac Hunter pulled out of, and they determined that they wanted to complete what they were doing in the state legislature.
Okay.
So that left a field of about 7 people.
I was amazed at so many people and so many names that I could not
Right,
recognize that was in
and
that
most of their
race.
names were Harris,
Well,
a derivative of
my
their
my
name.
Louisiana branch.
Right. But seriously, there were 3 persons in that particular race who lived in the same house. And the reporter from the Detroit Free Press actually went there to determine who these individuals were and how it was that 3 people from the same house registered to become the next Wayne County treasurer. That was in 2012.
A reporter actually wrote a story
Right. And
concerning it,
hmm
suggesting that there was some sort of
Most unusual.
games that were being played.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
The votes were being manipulated.
Hmm.
Okay.
And then there was also a candidate who lived around the corner, and then one who lived down the street.
Mm.
So it was a very interesting race to have some people, fabricated people, who were in that particular race.
It's apparent that someone actually loaded folks into your race.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And so they split up about 9,000, 8,000, 7,000 each votes for those 3 people from that one address. So that kind of skewed the numbers significantly when you think about if these 3 people lived in the same house and they knew individually, say 9,000 people for one person, 8,000 for another one, and then 7,000 for another one. It's kind of odd that 3 people know 10,000, no, almost 30,000 different people that voted for them individually.
Mm. You actually went by the house,
Oh yes. Hmm.
and what did you find?
Well, it was an occupied home, but
Okay.
I didn't actually go and knock on the door. I was just wanted to make sure it was not vacant.
Okay.
But the reporter had enough information to raise the suspicion of someone to say, how could 3 people from one house register to become the next Wayne County treasurer? That was just too much.
Based on your investigation, what did you find?
Well, the house was actually an occupied dwelling, but I didn't knock on the door.
Okay.
But it's very. I did pull the information from the county clerk's office to get the affidavit of the people, and they swear that they lived there. They filed the correct paperwork.
Okay.
Some of it was faxed in from CMA New York, which is they.
A CMA of New York.
Hmm.
Um, th- that is a sponsor of Jonathan Kinlock.
Well, that is correct, And they also,
And I remember when he did a program here, and I guess he's a program at another radio station now. And CMA of Western New York has been a mainstay
right.
of his in terms of his support for many years now.
So that name was registered. You know, on the top of a fax document, it'll tell you where it was sent from.
Right.
And so that name was running at the top with the date. So I said that's mighty interesting that this organization would have something to do with the Wayne County Treasurers race.
Out of Western New York.
Exactly.
That's right.
And they wasn't sponsoring anybody. It wasn't a radio program or anything. So I didn't get it. But again, the Detroit Free Press dropped the ball on it, and no one in the state of Michigan or our Attorney General followed up on it. So
What about the clerk's office?
the clerk's office, no.
Okay. Your bottom line on it.
Well, it was certainly was to distort the vote. It was again an opportunity for me and Mr. Votovich to go head up. The Detroit News in that particular race endorsed my candidacy. They did not endorse the incumbent. So that was very interesting as well.
And that is interesting. By way of, again, CMA of Western New York, was there any suggestion that Jonathan Kenlock was involved at all?
Well, his name never came up, but had someone investigated, I'm sure it would have led to somebody who was involved out of Detroit.
Again, CMA is, well, there's only one name now associated with that, but maybe I'm jumping the gun on that, and maybe
I think it's worth somebody to investigate, but hey, I didn't want to spend a lot of time on it because, hey, you know.
I just have one question. What rationale did the News give for endorsing your candidacy over Mr. Wotowich's?
They felt it was time for him to go, and that because of his claim that he should be rewarded for doing his job, they felt that it was time for him to move on. So.
He was well rewarded.
Oh,
didn't
most
he
definitely.
get some kind of
A bonus.
A bonus? Okay.
Right.
There's a state legislated
Right.
bonus set aside. They
But
were talking about repeal.
They did.
Was
They
it
did
repealed?
in
Okay.
that particular year.
But treasurers in other counties did not take advantage of that.
They didn't
as I
take the
understand
money.
it.
A
He was
lot
the
of
only
them
one
did not. He
he's the
was
only
one
that
of
took
the
money.
few who did take
One
it.
of the few. Okay.
Right, right.
Tens of thousands of dollars.
Oh, yeah.
It was a substantial amount of money. It actually
Over a period of
provided.
time, yeah.
It actually provided, at least from an objective standpoint, it seemed to justify or invite more foreclosures because there was an incentive
Right.
in his foreclosing versus attempting to keep people in their property.
Right.
And as you well know, as Detroiters know, I ran for
Right.
the office of treasurer.
You mean we
the,
put in for the selection
yeah,
process?
I'm sorry.
Right.
The appointment
Right, right.
in the first phase. But I did it as I do sometimes at the urging of Detroiters, wherein they want a voice in a particular race or they want a voice on an issue. And my position was that Mr. Wotowich's history indicated that there was more of a focus on foreclosing on properties than there was on keeping people in their homes.
Right.
And I wanted to change the paradigm of that discussion, so we started talking about what are the ways that we can utilize to keep folk in their property. And the application process, as you well know, was merely a resume, and it did not require anything beyond that. And I took it upon myself to draft a cover letter, and I presented a policy statement in that cover letter itemizing how I thought the Treasurer's Office could be more friendly to the residents of Wayne County in light of the fact that Wayne County had more foreclosures than anyone else in the country. That's
Correct.
all of North America, more foreclosures in this one county than anywhere else in the country. And to my mind, that struck a chord because if you're talking about demolition versus sustaining a property, I would rather err on the side of sustaining a property. Even if you look at the blight removal that's occurring in the city of Detroit, demolitions at $1,605 per household. If you took $16,500 and you gave it to someone who says, I want to rehab that property, the probability is that they could rehab it for 16.5,
Right, but even
and you would have a sustainable property.
Yeah.
But I'd like to know what your reasons were,
Well-
or are. My assumption, of course, because you're running in the actual race for the office, is that you intend to be successful in the race. That was never my intent. So your intent is to do what?
Well, I have ran since 1996, so that would make it 20 years. Uh, because of the need for people to save their homes. Pure and simple. That was the initial foray into it, because the Eastside Community Slate wanted to know, what does the Wayne County government do for our people? And so as we investigated, we come to find out that there was a huge percentage of inner city Detroiters losing their homes because they didn't pay their little tax. And that's what we used to call it back in those days. Wayne County, if you did not pay your little tax, you were subject to have a tax lien attached to your home. So once the law changed in 1999, and I realized that Mr. Botovich was not notified in the public of this change in law, which accelerated the process, then we really went full force to let people know, inform the voters and community, that this new property tax law was going to indeed cause you to lose your home a lot sooner. So that has been on my heart. As I delved into the office, there was way more to the Wayne County Treasurer's Office than foreclosed properties.
And that really was going to be my next question. What are some of the other responsibilities of the treasurer's office?
Okay, the treasurer simply is the custodian of all county funds, the keeper, the protector of all county funds, period.
For example?
The investor, millages, bondings, the auction process.
It's an enormous amount of money.
Totally. And so our attention is being diverted over the years to think about just property tax foreclosure as the issue, and that is not the issue. 85% of the people in Wayne County pay their taxes. 85%, that's commercial and residential. The majority of them are residential. I am concerned that the majority commercial are not paying their taxes properly. They're not paying their personal taxes. Are we collecting our tourist taxes? You know, our stadium authority, all of those taxes are important, because we don't want to put the burden on the taxpayers of residential when it should be on the folks who got the money. We got a lot of corporate headquarters in Wayne County. We need to make sure that each and every one of them are pulling their fair share.
I saw where, and it was in an article, when LeBron James played in during the playoffs games, the finals, when he played in Oakland, he was assessed $160,000 for those 2 games that he played.
Right.
So, for example,
Is taxes like that?
A playoff game here, and there was a playoff game. The treasurer's office would be responsible for collecting those taxes from those professional athletes.
And if not responsible, I would be making sure that, did somebody who was the taxing authority collect those taxes? Because we have professional players all the time, people who are a non-resident or resident. We want to make sure you're paying your taxes.
It's critical, and
It's
especially
critical.
when.
And water bills.
Well, explain that.
Okay, so we have the thing about your water bill being attached to your tax if you fail to pay it.
Right.
Well,
Becoming a lien on your property.
Mr. Votovich was kind of soft on that, because he wouldn't allow that to transfer and cause you to lose your property. But in the last several years, that changed. I don't know. He wasn't really there on a day-to-day basis, so it was really being ran by Shemansky and Chabris. So a lot of the human touch to the treasurer's office left when Mr. Votovich was not there every day.
What is the relationship with the treasurer's office and the land bank?
Oh my God, that's awful. The Detroit has been really assaulted by land banks. We started from the Michigan Fast Track under Governor Snyder, and then down to the Detroit Land Bank Authority, and then the Wayne County Land Bank Authority. Right now, the common thread among all 3 of them is Kim Holman, who is now the the deputy land management under the Wayne County Treasurer Eric Chabris' office. So she came directly from Governor Snyder to the Detroit Land Bank Authority, which she ran for over a year, and she got fired last year because of some kind of situation that happened there. But she got a nice severance pay of $23,000. But now she
Well, wasn't she
lands
involved in another worker
some sort of
stalking or some
harassment,
sort of
yes, stalking.
Up
Yeah.
in
soap
Ann Arbor.
opera-ish kind of
Right.
situation?
So that,
Yeah.
that was all kind of mysterious what happened there. But she was the first fall guy of that particular incident. And then later on, the man who was actually doing the stalking, he was let go
Okay.
from the Detroit Land Bank. But now she turns up at Wayne County about a month or so ago as the same position that Eric Chabris had, which is over the land management, the deputy land management. So she comes with the experience about how land bank work and how they want it to work. So that's very dangerous because right now we have some lots of incidents with the Detroit Land Bank where people are losing their property after being notified 3 days to say, if you don't respond to this in 3 days, the Detroit Land Bank Authority can seize your property. So that mentality is now being transferred over to the Wayne County Land Bank, which this young lady has the control over, which Mr. Chabris used to do.
And it is a 3-day notice.
For the Detroit Land Bank, it's a 3. If they attach your property, as they say, it's being cited for blight or whatever they say it's being cited for. If you do not respond by calling their office and being in touch with them in 3 days, your property is subject to be seized by the Detroit Land Bank Authority.
Now this is the agency now that is under investigation.
Oh yeah.
And it is, I guess, with the suspicion that there is some collusion
About the demolitions.
Okay.
Right. But now the Wayne County Treasurer's Office is also under investigation for flipping properties, the auction bid process from 2009 to 2014. The feds is looking into it. And that was reported by Cranes of Detroit in February this year on front page. Now, Cranes, they don't usually devote a whole lot of ink to stuff that has no validity of it. So if you see something on the front page of Cranes Detroit, that's serious.
Did this have something to do with even foreigners coming in and getting
Right.
property and,
Right.
and flipping those
And flipping the
properties,
properties.
right away?
Right.
In fact, they were discouraging these speculators from getting involved
Right.
in lieu of wanting to get more individual homeowners
Right,
actually
right.
sort of stay
And you
secured
would
in
think
their
the
homes.
treasurer would have learned based on RIMCO and how they devastated the community some years back. And that whole process, and we're still suffering from the whole travesty of RIMCO being involved.
That
RIMCO
was in
had
the mid-90s.
Yeah, and RIMCO had this system where they would purchase homes, come back, and then they would mortgage those homes, take that money from the
Right.
mortgage and get new homes.
Right.
And they really built a house of cards based on this enormous amount of properties that they really had control of.
And then RIMCO also invested into our police and fire pension and general retirees pension. And so we lost millions of dollars with that whole fiasco. But there was such a paper trail that you would wonder why it was the Treasurer's Office didn't see these continual names over and over and over, thousands of times in your tax rolls. Wouldn't you raise some suspicions about what the motive is and, what's going on here? It's just beyond me on the things that's happened, particularly in the last 4 or 5 years with the Treasurer's Office. It's just a repeat of the same thing. So we do not need the same mentality going
Well,
on.
but that's not necessarily what we're seeing now. It's
Oh, are
a
you
different kind of
kidding me?
Well, what do you say?
We have the same situation when you look at the different names that are involved. When the tax rolls is printed to say these properties are subject to foreclosure, you look at it's the same names over and over, year after year, who buy properties, rent them out, milk them out for all they can get, and then they lose them back into the process.
Don't pay taxes.
Don't pay taxes. Don't pay water bills.
And just collect rent for 3 or 4 years. And
they do it on commercial and residential. It's the same people. So why don't we learn from this? The Treasurer's Office gathers the information. It sees who they are. Why do we keep doing business with them? It's beyond me.
Well, you have these land speculators, foreign land speculators, who buy up tracts of land that they've never seen.
Yeah,
And
they
in a
call them
lot of-
bundled.
Yes, and in a lot of instances, the people who buy for them have never seen the properties. They
right.
simply buy them and they determine what it is that they can get by way of investment. And if they can't get anything, as you indicate, they leave the properties where they are, which further devastates and decimates the community. The thing I was wondering about is you indicate that these names keep occurring with regularity. If you look at the Detroit uh, demolition investigation that's currently underway, you have three demolition companies. And in one instance, you have a company that is residing in the same building as another company, same corporate address.
Right.
So it's not as if there is a great deal of research that needs to be done. Because if you're looking at three investors as opposed to thousands that you reference in the treasurer's office, it would seem patently obvious that something may be awry. But I don't know. People,
Yeah, but those contractors are under the city's demolition scheme of things. But the issue that I have with those monies was the hardest hit funds that was used for demolition to
Right.
address blight. But my concern is that as the treasurer's office, they allowed those funds to be used for demolition as opposed to saying, no, this money should be used for property tax. People who are having problems with paying their property
The
taxes.
cycle
The cycle.
that you've actually mentioned, if you can interrupt the cycle by allowing these folks to have these funds to upgrade and to pay
Right.
back
To pay their
taxes,
back taxes.
then in fact that interrupts the cycle and
Right.
and will prevent it from having to go
To
to
demolition.
demolition.
Right, exactly. And so the hardest hit funds was meant from the federal government to assist people with their mortgages or paying their property taxes that were delinquent. So if you clearly had an opportunity to make sure you received property taxes from some entity, you should have been advocating for that money to come directly to Wayne County Treasurer to satisfy the outstanding tax lien, as opposed to conceding and said, "Oh, you can use all of our money to go to demolition for the city of Detroit. We don't need our tax dollars that the federal government is allowing us under the hardest hit fund." That's what, in the final analysis, happened. Because when you don't, as a taxing authority, you don't weigh in on these tax abatements or whatever. You just say, "Oh yeah, okay." We give them tax.
But ultimately you sign off on them.
Ultimately, you do, but you don't have to sign off on them.
I was, and there's a major article in the paper today that's talking about, I guess this new soccer franchise, and which means that they want to build a new stadium.
Right.
Stadium.
Right. But
And-
they need to look somewhere else besides Gratiot and I-75. That spot is the jail. It needs to be built on that spot. We've had too much money invested into that particular hole. It needs to be continued and completed as a jail. Look for your soccer field somewhere else, Mr. Dan Gilbert.
And we have been, as a community,
Ted Soros.
more than willing to actually, as citizens, to help contribute to building these stadiums.
Oh, please.
And part of the reason why these folks are encouraged to get into these very wealthy people are encouraged to get into these sports franchises is that it offers these enormous tax breaks.
well, not only tax breaks, if you look at, and I think Detroiters are now, and I think the residents of the state of Michigan are now questioning just what we, the people, get out of these kinds of contracts. Because if you look at the new Red Wings arena, when the Red Wings played out of Joe Louis, we had a part of the proceeds from their sales. We had some marketing rights. We don't have anything going into the Red Wings arena now. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. No naming rights, no proceeds from any of the sales, no percentage of anything. And we took money from the school aid fund to assist in building that
it's
stadium. So,
extraordinary.
so how do we keep, as a people, residents of the state of Michigan, how do we keep giving to corporations and we get nothing in return? When we talk about community benefits agreements, people get upset and say that's a deterrent to business. When community benefits agreements are the norm around the country, it's not the exception, it's the norm. And not only is that at play in major cities, it's at play in small municipalities as well. So I don't know. I just think that the corporate welfare that we have been financing, at some point, you have to say that you've got to give back, and if you can't give back, you can't get tax abatements, you can't locate your property in an enterprise zone and not pay taxes for 15 years, which is what the state of Michigan allowed a lot of these people to do. So we have to stop financing other folks' undertakings, which is what we're doing on the
Right.
backs of the little people.
Well, part of that problem, excuse me, it was that it was not full disclosure to we the people, the little people. So if we had somebody to weigh in and totally analyze it and let we the people know what was coming down the pike from the state, like we pay lobbyists for the state of Michigan, I mean for the city of Detroit.
Yes.
Our lobbyists failed to really disclose to us what this meant, the ramifications of.
Where's the
But-
mayor's
but I used
office,
to-
the city council?
So as a treasurer,
and the
I would-
lobbyists?
But that's what I'm talking
As
about.
a-
It-
as a
does
treasurer,
everybody
I would
have a role to play.
The treasurer has no direct role, but I would have weighed in to say X, Y, and Z is going to occur compared to what we had at Joe Louis Arena. We're getting nothing out of this. Nothing.
You had mentioned bundling, and we have a caller. We're going to get to you in just a second. And you invited the call as well, 868-0351, 868-0342, and 868-4336. Well, and back to this idea of bundling property for the
auction.
purpose of, I guess, businesses. I look at the Nation of Islam's new Mecca project.
Detroit Mecca.
And that seems like what you'd like to see happen. Named Mecca because this is where the Nation of Islam was founded here in Detroit. So at first glance, it looks like that's the kind of activity that one would encourage.
Yeah, you would want to encourage it if it was broader, across the board, open to everybody to understand that process of how to purchase properties. So it shouldn't be exclusive to any one group or speculator.
Because didn't they purchase, what was it, 100 homes, 100 tracts,
Yeah,
100 homes?
well, that we know of, but who knows? And that's what full disclosure would show, exactly what's going on there. But again, the goal is to get properties back on the tax roll so we can receive taxes. So I'm not against that necessarily. I'm against it being, again, we've suffered years of policies from the Treasurer's office and just exclusive groups of people. This is not counting what's currently happening over the years who have been in on purchasing properties, prime properties.
But you're not saying that that's not necessarily a good
Oh,
thing.
that's not a good thing or a bad thing. I say it needs to be fair across the board to everybody.
Okay.
So we need to know that process.
Good morning, caller. You're on the air. Good morning, caller. You're on the air.
It is so good to hear some behind-the-scenes information.
She just dropped the entire load here this morning, didn't she? She kind of backed up to the door.
But it's important for the community to know the behind-the-scenes information. I have several questions. One, does the Wayne County Treasurer have subpoena power?
No, it
Okay.
does not have subpoena power.
Huh? No. How many lawyers work in the Treasurer's office, do you know?
Well, most of the people
Approximately.
are civil servant, but there's a lawyer that I know of, and that's the new land bank authority person besides Mr. Chabris. But the office does not require a lawyer because you have Wayne County Corporation Counsel that provides legal advice. The Treasurer's office is about public policy. It's not meant to be a legal arm of government.
Well, the reason I ask if there are any lawyers in that department, because of the list of criminal activity that I'm hearing. And Deanna was saying earlier that there are speculators, from foreign speculators. I happen to know of two sets of issues that are not foreign. They are very, very local speculators, and they're doing exactly what you all have been talking about. They will sell a piece of property on land contract. The unsuspecting buyers don't know that their taxes are not going to be paid. They pay faithfully month after month after month, and they find themselves with an eviction notice.
Right.
And one of the sets happens to be using his sister, I guess, who has a married name, and some other folks. They also bid on property in twos and threes, and take it out of the range of someone who sincerely would buy the property, live in it, and take care of it. So there are a lot of scurrilous things that are happening there, but I'm glad that you are here to share some important information.
Well, regarding the legal entity that they rely on, as I said, Mr. Shabri was in that position, and there was an issue that came up about the DeHoco property, which is Detroit House of Correction,
Oh, yeah.
back in 2012, and it was brought to my attention by some people out in Plymouth Township that there was something going on amiss there, and they gave me all the information. I researched it and determined and agreed with them that there was a problem in the Wayne County Treasurer's Office, and they allowed this property, which was valued over $16 million, to be sold to Plymouth Township for $600,000. And so when I looked at it, and I said, well, the simple solution is for the treasurer to reverse the sale, to cancel the sale. So we contacted the treasurer through the city council, and they absolutely refused to do it. And so I said, well, obviously you're not reading the general tax property code, because it allows you the opportunity to correct this error. They absolutely refused to do it. And so the Supreme Court a couple of months ago ruled that the city of Detroit was entitled to that property and Wayne County was wrong. So now we have
Wonderful.
to...
Now, my question is, what is the racial makeup of the treasurer's office? Because Plymouth Township is about, what, 99% white?
Yeah, and Republican. I just happened to be in Plymouth Township that year, and I guess the person who reached out to me was just very concerned about what was going to happen if Detroit did not exercise its right. And so I went out there because I knew it was a Republican territory, but I just was thinking, well, I might find somebody who would be interested in hearing what my platform was. And indeed, this person brought it to my attention that this problem was going on in the treasurer's office.
Wow.
Now, based on the Supreme Court decision, that whole thing is unraveling now.
Yeah, the Supreme Court decided about a month ago that Detroit indeed was entitled to their property back, that Wayne County erred in selling it to Plymouth Township.
I hope they follow through. My last question statement is, I read that the owners in Canada purchase and build their own stadiums. They are not subsidized with taxes like they are around here.
But Theo, and that is not just Canada, but that's a trend throughout the country now. These billionaires are being asked to purchase their own stadiums. However, we seem so far behind the time here in Detroit because they still think they can put this tax burden on us.
Well, we're still up under the Detroit.
To stop tax abatement.
Yeah, well, we're still under the Detroit Wayne County Stadium Authority for the Comerica Park and the Ford Field. And so that doesn't expire until 2037. So I want to make sure that we're collecting taxes for the tourism that's supposed to support that, the car rental, hotel room, all of that comes up under Detroit Wayne County Stadium Authority.
And for heaven's sakes, these very wealthy athletes that are coming into town.
Plenty money.
Good morning, caller. You're on the air. You're on there with Beverly Kendall Walker.
Okay, good morning. You know, I have been in the electoral process for over 40-some years, and I have never seen what is going on now in the treasurer's office. There are so many billboards that Eric Chabris has in all the communities where the dates have been changed, and in my opinion, that's to keep his name out there. And the other thing is all of these commercials on TV. Now, there's one. Now, they just was supposed to have been Friday, was supposed to have been the cutoff date, but we know he extended it. But now he has a service announcement, not a service announcement, he has a commercial stating, make sure you keep your arrangements. Now, it was just Friday, so these commercials had to be made before Friday. So, if anything, Wayne County citizens should really be upset that their Wayne County tax dollars have been used to keep his name out there when some of their properties could have been paid off.
Yeah, those dates are really interesting in that if it was full disclosure when the bill was written 2 years ago, if the Treasurer's Office was educating the public about those sunset dates, we wouldn't be up against this latest assault that we keep hearing about, and the deadline date is June the 30th. The extension to July the 8th is something that the treasurer's office cannot do because that was state legislation. So I don't know what he's talking about. He's extending. Now he can extend what he calls the March 31st, which is the deadline date for paying your taxes, to a date in the future because the treasurer has the power to do that. But the treasurer
Right.
does not have the power to extend that 18% relief that the state legislators wrote that had a sunset
Hmm.
date absolutely of June the 30th. I don't know what he's talking about. He's sending out mixed
I don't
messages.
either.
But overall, you
But can
have
I
to
ask?
be
Am I still
impressed with
on?
what has been reported lately, and there's a 36% increase in individuals actually coming in and paying taxes or getting involved in some sort of payment plan.
Whose numbers you going to believe?
Well, those numbers are coming from,
Mm-hmm.
isn't the news and
Mm-hmm.
the free press that's
Mm-hmm.
our oracle?
Mm-hmm.
Well, am I
All right.
still on the air?
Yes, you are.
Hello? Okay, I would like to say this too. People call me, when it's election time. But I got phone calls yesterday from people that had been receiving this information about him being, the treasurer. So people are educated enough to know whenever you receive campaign literature, the literature will give the history of your family, et cetera, et cetera. And they were very upset at the fact that it seemed like it started off as a treasure, but it seemed like it started off ending in the process of campaign literature. Wayne County residents should be upset about this. This is something that should never occur. Like I said, I've been in this process for over 40-some years. I've never seen anything like this before in my life, but I'm enjoying your program. Thank you.
We appreciate the call. Thank you so much. Good morning, caller. You're on the air with Beverly Kendall Walker. She's a candidate for Wayne County Treasurer. Hello, caller.
How you doing today?
Wonderful. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I just want to make one comment. This is Yakanan from Detroit. Detroit and Michigan itself as a whole is about 40 years behind administratively. I've noticed this throughout all the departments. They're still using paper from Engler and his companies, and the administrative process as far as getting the monies where they need to be is being blocked, for lack of a better word. And these things that they're creating today, there's only one way out of this, and that is our children. That's the education of our children. And that education must consist of knowing and pointing out who the enemy is. I've told this once before. I went to Dearborn to do a little shopping, came out of the store, to load the car. A lady was in front of me, and a kid rose up out the back. He was about 3 years old, and he looked me directly in the eye, the 3-year-old, and he said these words, "Get out of here." And he yelled it, "Get out of here! Get out of here!" And his mother and father, heads forward, continued to load the car, did not correct him or anything. They're teaching these children to hate young. We must not teach our children to hate, but we must teach our children to recognize the enemy. And as you look around, because people don't know where they are, they don't know what to do. And not only that, they don't know who the enemy is. We are at war. These tactics that they're using down in the tax office are war tactics.
Mm-hmm.
These are tactics of warfare, taking people's homes and all. Thank you for letting me have this make this comment. I'm going to listen. You have a great show too.
Thank you.
I appreciate you calling. Thank you so much. Good morning, caller. You're on the air. Hello, caller. You're on the air. Yes. Hello, caller. Caller, you're on the air.
Mr. Fabrice still got the property together.
And
Is y'all laundering property, you and Fabrice?
What was his
I
question?
can't understand. I can't
it sound
hear.
like there was laundering. He said the laundering. So maybe he's
Caller,
accusing
can
me.
you speak up?
like Supreme got connections on the vacant houses, and Richard is getting them through him.
Right, right. Yeah, that's part of the problem. There,
Yeah,
you know,
that's
and
what's
I
going
hate
on
the
with
word
Supreme.
transparency, but there is a certain lack of transparency in the Wayne County Treasurer's
I
office.
sound like you threw my name in there though.
Well.
I can't hear, so you're
Your
safe on
friend
my
Richard,
end.
we know y'all growed up together.
I can't understand what you're saying.
We certainly our children interact, and what can I say?
And you
I
ain't
don't
gonna
have any.
say
I don't have
nothing
any
bad
houses.
about
I don't have any
Sabrina.
houses coming through me
You
though.
ain't gonna say nothing bad about Sabrina. I can see it in your eyes, Richard. That's the man.
Hey, well, I happen to respect, and certainly I have in the past supported Beverly Kendall Walker, so I can
Good luck, Beverly. You
I
shooting
can
close to
vouch
the
I
enemy.
can vouch for her character, and the information that she gave this morning also speaks to
There's
another
a paper
level
trail out there,
of
so
why she is a really capable candidate. What can I say? I've never been accused of laundering houses. Can you launder houses? I want to take a break. We're going to take a break. Then we're going to come back and actually take a hard break at the top of the hour. But I need to take a break now. My lines are open. I need to get our families in from Flint, as well as Leland McGee, Harvey. So let's take a quick break, and we're going to be back, and we'll kind of close it out as well with Beverly Kendall Walker. It's just been a wonderful opportunity this morning sitting in with you, and I appreciate you. You actually being with us. But I think we have to make up for two times because we had Mr. Sabri here twice, so I guess we have to bring you back. So let's take a break, and we'll be back in just a moment. Welcome back, folks. Um, Whispers. They're no longer just.
Ongoing production.
Welcome back. This is Crisis in Flint, Michigan. My name is Richard Hairston. Of course, as per usual, Dr. Deidre Wilcoxon is here. We certainly appreciate the opportunity to sit with her. And our guest this morning has been Mrs. Walker and Beverly Kendall Walker. There's been so much that you've actually kind of talked about, and we'll finish it up perhaps on another occasion. But a couple of things. I just wanted to state that Mrs. McGee, are you there? Lena McGee Harvey, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I just wanted to state as I close out my guest from the first hour, when I informed her that we were going to invite her in on this coming Wednesday, she was reticent because she did not want to interrupt the conversations that we have with you on Wednesdays, because she certainly attends in our audience, and she certainly is, and I don't want to say a fan, that seems to be well, she says fan.
I'm a fan of good information.
And it is Beverly Kendall Walker, who is a candidate for Wayne County Treasurer, and she didn't want to get involved this morning because she didn't want to interrupt anything that you were about to say, and I did want you folks to meet.
Thank you
you.
so very kindly, and thank you for the sentiment, and good luck with your race there. I greatly appreciate it. Anything that we can do to forge both communities means everything to me, and to be able to ascertain all of the things that are going on in Detroit. And that's one thing. We are actually one community when it comes to African American people. So I greatly appreciate your sentiments, as well as Mr. Richard and Ms. Wilcox. Good morning, everybody.
Well, good morning. And we also want to say good morning to Bishop Jefferson.
Good morning.
Good morning. And I want to thank you for joining us this morning as well. Of course, thanks to Lila McGee Harvey, who has arranged this for us. We want to just close out this segment with a final comment from our guest this morning. And then we will take a quick break, and then we will come back, and we're going to talk about the travails of trying to maintain a household with bottled water, for heaven's sakes. But Beverly Kendall Walker,
I
just kind
did
of
want
close
to
us out.
ask her about the land bank authority up in Genesee County, how that's working for you, because we know land bank authorities in general are suspect, and so
Did she want me to answer
yes,
that?
Yes, I guess.
Okay, based on my experience and the research that we've been doing, what we're looking at is we begin to look at every organization in every municipality that we have after post this lead storm. And so there was an article that came out in the newspaper probably about a month and a half ago that said the city of Flint had more abandoned homes than any city in the nation. And if you look at our city, that has taken place. Plus, you'll also hear that we have to shrink the city because of the tax base and we can't afford to do our schools and everything. Well, if the land bank is probably occupying and holding 30 to 40% of our property and they can't cut the grass and they're becoming dilapidated, and then you're turning around and reselling these dilapidated homes back to people in the community, but then you're saying to them they can't get insurance, they can't get water turned on because the foundation is cracked. It has been a scheme, and it's beginning to kill our communities. One of the things that has happened is our former director of our land bank, which is Doug Weiland, he just resigned. And the sentiment that I had is, who is going to inherit this mess? Because the land bank is receiving a lot of lawsuits. People were tired of walking through the community, and the grass is taller than a 6-foot fence because they've taken more properties than they can maintain.
Exactly.
So he who owns the land makes all the rules.
Linda McGee, I want you to hold just a
Thank
final
you.
statement before we let you
Thank
go.
you.
Beverly Kendall
I
Walker.
appreciate being here, and we share a kindred soul with Flint because this urban problems that we're having, not with the water situation, but the land grabs and all those power grabs, is so important that we pay attention to what's going on because truly the enemy is out there and it's trying to swallow us up, and so we got to stay a step ahead of the game. Make sure we know the issues and understand them and act on them. We can't just keep sitting around and receiving information that don't do anything about it. So for Detroiters, on August the 2nd, I need you to do something about this. I'm just sick and tired of it. Totally.
August the 2nd, you're
On the ballot, one of two of us.
to vote for Beverly Kendall Walker.
Amen. And I'm still praying for my cousins up in Flint, Cathedral of Faith, Pastor Chris Martin.
We got to go. We got to take a break. Beverly Kendall Walker, thank you so much.
Bless you. Thank you so much.
We'll be back in just a
WHBR.
moment. We're going to talk about how difficult it is to maintain hygiene and just a healthy family in Flint with all of these problems with lead, for heaven's sakes. We'll take a break. We'll be back in just a moment.